Hey guys, welcome to Pop Culture Curiosities, where I, a small filmmaker who has worked on some big sets and who covers nostalgic, obscure, and otherwise strange content on the internet, tells stories to my friend Gabe about the weird happenings behind the scenes of movies and TV shows that a lot of us may know, or just other things that are weird that happened in pop culture history. You okay, Gabe?
Doing great. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm happy to be here too. This story is a lot, so I'm just like, are we okay? In case you're wondering, we're talking about, this is episode 2 of our new podcast. We are talking about Love is Blind, the new allegations that are coming out about the way that show is run, and it is apparently just royal disaster. I was going to combine this story in with other stories about like reality TV. And then, I took 5 pages of allegations notes down. And so we're here. So I was going to tell you the story about the craziness behind the set of The Wizard of Oz and like parsing fact from fiction. That has been moved to next week because this wild stuff apparently has been going down on that set, allegedly. All of this is alleged. We weren't there. They filmed, I think, seasons 1 and either 3 or 4. They filmed like 2 of the seasons at least here in Atlanta. Neither of us worked on it, which apparently is a very good thing for us, allegedly.
We cannot say this enough. Allegedly.
We just need a big siren that's like, this is alleged.
Please don't send hate to anyone we're talking about because this is all alleged and not proven necessarily.
We are not claiming these things. We are reporting on what is being claimed and sharing our own personal stories if they happen to arise. So yes, let's just get into it. We're only going back, in case you missed the first episode. This is a TARDIS closet. Surprise. We're only going back 4 years in time this time, though. So instead of like a road trip, it's like when your mom is like, hey, you want to go to Target?
Heck yeah, I want to go to Target. Let's go to Target.
Yeah, and it's like 10 minutes down the road. That's basically what we're doing. So we're taking our TARDIS back to 2019. Whoa!
Oh, wait. Whoa. Finding... I was able to find the... Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yay!
Oh.
This is what happens when our producer isn't here. The lights and the cameras have to be done by me and Gabe. And Gabe is great at operating the lights, but who knows how I did with the cameras. Probably bad if you ask our producer.
Oh, thank you for all you do, Spencer. And you did great job, Avery. Is the lighting okay in here?
I think it's okay. I think it's good.
Okay, cool. I didn't want it to be too bright.
Sorry, Spencer. Thank you. Anyway.
We're back.
What do you know about Love is Blind? Have you seen it?
I've heard, I listened to a podcast called Messy by Mike MGTV and Mac Does It. And I think they mentioned that one of their friends is on Love is Blind, or they applied to Love is Blind or something. But all I know, or I believe, isn't it they're like in a room and they can like talk to people, but they just can't see them, and they go on like dates, but there's like a partition. And so you get to fall in love with their personality.
Yes, to catch anybody up to speed who has not watched, I watched the first 2 seasons. I think they've done 2 more, and I kind of lost interest, so I haven't seen those. But Love is Blind is a reality dating show on Netflix that rose to popularity during the 2020 lockdown. The show starts with a 10-day period of contestants sitting in these giant pods with mics in them, so they can hear each other, but they can't see each other. The idea is that they get engaged within the first 10-day period, and those that do get to meet each other face-to-face for the first time. So you have to get engaged without seeing anybody. You got to just, you're talking to them through a blue wall that just kind of pulsates light. It's very like weirdly Black Mirror when you really think about it. It rose in popularity during the pandemic, and I think part of that was because they accidentally made the pandemic dating show because they're in separate rooms, so everybody who was in quarantine was like, this doesn't give me a whole lot of anxiety to watch right now when we're all like afraid to go outside. So they, little did they know it was going to be very topical, this idea of like, we are separated, but we are dating, you know? Once they get engaged, again, within the first 10-day period, and some people, or at least the editing makes it appear that they get engaged well before those 10 days are up. They're getting engaged like fast. They do all these speed dates. They gravitate toward the ones that end up getting engaged, gravitate towards a specific person. They get engaged, they meet each other face to face, and then they kind of get shipped off. First to have like a honeymoon phase at a resort, which is just like a lot of bikini shots and makeout sessions. It's a lot like every other dating show you've seen. That's where the novelty of this show kind of goes away once they get engaged. It's like, yes, okay, what are we gonna do now? Send them to Mexico and have them make out in a hot tub. We haven't seen that before.
The Bachelor is like, or Bachelor and Bachelorette are like, how dare you?
Sorry, but where is my lie? I will apologize when you can show me the lie.
Everyone just sends clips of people making out in hot tubs in Mexico.
What a weird thing to have my DMs bombarded with. So after that, they are then sent back to their home city, which in a couple of seasons was our home city of Atlanta. Represent. People used to joke with me and be like, you should go on Love is Blind. And I was like, no, in hell. I will see you in hell before that happens. And apparently, according to these allegations, I made a correct choice for more than one reason. But then they get shipped back to their hometown. 1 year it was Chicago. I think 1 year was somewhere else. But then they have to figure out how to move in together and go through all the typical engaged couple things of like meeting each other's parents, planning a wedding, etc., etc., etc. Like you have too many shoes. How is that going to fit in the closet with my, like, all the like practical real world things of like, we did get engaged after like a week. We now have to figure out how to practically make this happen, right? So it's a lot. That's like always, and that somebody's parents always don't like somebody because it's like, hey, mom and dad, I met this person on a dating show last week and we're gonna get married like 3 weeks from now, so hey, you're invited. So it's always a lot. After all of that, the season ends with all of their weddings happening simultaneously, where the big question is, will they go through with getting married to this person that they just met, or will they reject their fiance in front of all of their friends, all of their family, and basically the entire world and the internet? Right, so they get up to the altar, and basically one of them will be like, I've seen it happen, where it's like, the one person is like, okay, you go first. Josh, I don't remember if there was actually anybody named Josh, but contestant A is like, we've been through this experience together, and I love you so much, and this whole experience has showed me that love really is blind, and we can have this life together, and I'm so excited for everything we're gonna do together, and yes, I will marry you. And then contestant B, who we'll call like, I don't know, Michelle, is just like, yeah, I can't marry you. This is really weird. And everybody's just like, fair, but also ouch. And then that person just leaves. And the person is standing at the altar in front of everybody they know, knowing that this is going to be on TV for everybody, including like, this show is so big, the Kardashians have talked about liking this show. Like celebrities of all kinds have been like, this was great. Like in lockdown, everybody was like, is anybody watching Love is Blind? And so, like, imagine it's like my biggest rejection of my life. Kim Kardashian now thinks it's her favorite show.
Oh no! To get rejected in front of Kim Kardashian.
Not Kim K.
Not Kim. We love Kim Kardashian.
She had to save the world with selfies. If you didn't see that live stream, that was something that we had to deal with. It was a book called Imagine, spearheaded by Anna Todd, and the first story was a short story about a dystopian world with selfies being illegal and who is the patriot who's out here fighting for everyone's freedom with selfies. It's Kim Kardashian. It was a wild story. Anyway.
And you worked at a Best Buy. I don't know how that's important, but it is to the story.
Yeah, that's all on the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube yet. We don't know how you're listening to us, but we're glad that you're listening to us on wherever you end up getting your podcasts.
Yes, thank you for being here.
We appreciate you. You're wonderful and amazing. I think it's funny, in my notes, I just wrote Nick and Vanessa Lachey because the show is hosted by Nick and Vanessa Lachey. And instead of going to the trouble of like writing the 2 paragraphs that I wanted to write about Nick and Vanessa Lachey as hosts, I just was like, I'll remember. If I just put their names in there, it's seared into my brain. Nick Lachey, it was a meme after the first episode of the first season because there was this thing where like they walk out together, right? Like they're married in real life. So they're like, we are the married couple that is hosting this show, which they call a social experiment. And they're like, we're going to help you find your perfect soulmate. And then they have almost nothing to do with the show for like most of it. Once they leave the pods, even before they leave the pods, basically they come in and they tell them, hey, this is what's going to happen. And then you barely see them again until like the end, right? They're not even at the weddings, which I find interesting. I think Nick and Vanessa Lachey need to sit there and like be nail biting like the rest of us. Like, are they going to say yes? Are they going to say no? Like, they need to go through all the same suffering with us, you know?
Well, maybe they just don't want to see their experiments failed. But as a scientist, you have to know that your experiments will fail. And maybe you'll get that result that you need. But you need to be there, Nick and Vanessa Lachey.
Children will be studying for centuries in science history the great findings of scientists Nick and Vanessa Lachey.
That should have been a story in Imagines. You know, Kim Kardashian needs some scientists to help her to destroy the patriarchy with selfies. And then there's Nick and Vanessa Lachey being like, we're scientists. We'll help you. Algorithms, even though, I don't know.
Yeah, them setting up the whole, like, this is the experiment and we're so proud of it. And then leaving just kind of feels like somebody you know made a movie and they're like gathering everybody to watch this kind of a train wreck movie and they put it on and then they leave. And it's just like, no, you have to sit here with the rest of us.
You can't you can't just give money and then just leave whenever you feel like it and wait for and come back when the paycheck is ready.
Again, nothing against them like as people, but they are very funny hosts to me personally. The whole internet was fascinated by the fact that they would walk out on the first episode and Vanessa would be like, so I'm Vanessa Lachey, I'm your host. And then Nick Lachey is right there next to her and he says, and I obviously am Nick Lachey. Like, obviously, I've never introduced myself ever before being like, yes, obviously this is who I am. And everybody was like, obviously? So obviously I'm Nick Lachey became like a meme for a while.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. To the fact where I think he started making fun of himself in like the second season where he's like, obviously I'm Nick Lachey. And Vanessa Lachey is very passionate about the people who have been potentially wronged by their fiancés on this show. There was one guy in season 2 and this guy, and again, I always say when covering reality TV, which I don't do too often on my channel, but like I always say, like, you know, taking this at face value, which you never can with reality TV, because you can never tell like who's been told to be like, okay, you're the asshole, that's your job. You never know who's like been edited in a really poor way, and it's like it wasn't like that at all. So like, who knows? But like there was this guy whose big thing was he gets engaged to this girl named Deepti, and this girl is like a model and like everybody loves her. She's like the nicest person. She's got it together. She's gorgeous, all of this. And the guy's like, I'm not really feeling it. But what does he do? He goes through the entire 6-week process being like, I don't really feel any attraction to her. Like, she kind of just reminds me of my aunt, but then just doesn't say anything to her. And then he gets to the reunion episode and everybody's pissed at this guy. He's like the villain of the season because he's so shallow. And this poor girl who's so sweet has been like completely embarrassed by this guy. he famously said, I know love is not completely blind. Like, why can't love be a little blind? Like, love is blurry. So people were like, love is blurry.
welcome to our after show. Love is blurry.
I think he started a podcast called Life is Blurry. For real. This was like a thing that happened.
Hey, he knows how to brand himself, I guess.
He does. He strikes you, his on-camera persona at least is very much like the guy who's like a crypto bro that's kind of like one of those like, I'm an alpha male, you know, like one of those guys.
Yes.
That's his whole like persona. I don't know if that's how he is in real life, but that's his like persona that he's now created for himself. Whatever. Anyway, and to be fair, like the term love is blind is a funny thing for them to call the show, because when people say like, well, love is blind, they don't mean it in like a good way. They mean it in like, you really only saw the good things and not the red flags in that person because of how blinded you were to them. Like, yeah. It's not a selling point to be like, yes, love really is blind and that is a good thing. So it's always been funny to me. But anyway, all of this to say, this guy, Vanessa Lachey, went off on this guy at the reunion episode and started like yelling at him and being like, well, her husband Nick Lachey is just there like, I don't want to be here, just like not saying anything. She's just like, what if she had been in a horrible car accident after, like, thank God I have a husband that loves me. What if she had like become a paraplegic? And everybody's like, okay.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
We were all rooting for you moment. And what she was saying was pretty, like, I totally agree with the sentiment of what she was saying, but she was just going in and everybody was like, oh my God. Vanessa, honey, I need you to take a breath, please. Like, she was like, she had been waiting all season to tell him what she thought of him, and she did. It was a lot. So anyway, those are the hosts of the show. I realize I just spent like 10 minutes telling you about the hosts of the show, but I really need you to know what we're going to be talking about, right? So that's the show. Contestants say they were recruited for this show. How do you think they were recruited for this show?
I've heard in the past how some contestants are like DM'd by people on Instagram or maybe emailed, and then they're like, this might be fake, but then they're like, no, here's this, that, and the other to like prove. Yeah, contestants say they were recruited through LinkedIn, Instagram, and Tinder, which is my favorite way that people have said they've been recruited for this show, because can you imagine, you're a producer, you're matching with people, like you're swiping right on all these people, and then you match, and they're like, hey, and the person's like, oh, I actually don't want to date you, but guess what? I have an opportunity for you. It's like the hun bots that come into your comments, but instead of them being like, hey, do you want to make a lot of money? It's like, hey, hun, you want to get married? Boy, do I have an opportunity that's going to change your life. For the best, we'll find out. After they were recruited, and by the way, like, social media recruitment is not that, like, it sounds very weird and it is weird, but it's normalized. Like, we like doing extra work and stand-in work, you get jobs on Facebook a lot. Like, that's, people would always be like, what, that's not real, and I'd be like, yeah, no, like, literally, like, a Facebook message goes up from the casting directors who are like casting agency who's like, okay, we need these people, and you submit with a picture and be like, I am one of those people, and then if they like you, they're just like, okay, they email you details. Not saying it's not weird, it's just what happens. Well, it's so normalized for me. If anyone were to say that's weird, I'd be like, what do you mean? Is it? But that's normal for me. I've been doing this for a while. What do you mean you don't just submit emails because of Facebook things? Once they were recruited on Instagram, LinkedIn, Tinder, however, somebody slid into their DMs and was like, hey, I'm a producer. Be on my dating show where you're actually getting married. They then apparently went through interviews with producers, background checks, psychological evals, and disclosed their past relationships. Several participants, for reasons we'll get into in a second, believe that they did not actually care about the mental safety of the cast, with one member accusing them of, quote, wanting them not to be crazy, but just crazy enough. So it sounds like, oh, they're going through all of these procedures to be like, oh, mental evals and all this stuff and making sure that everybody's okay. And apparently they didn't actually do that. So
Here, let's get into some of the allegations, right? We're going to start, it's kind of like an iceberg. We're going to start with like but instead of just like the most known to least known, it's kind of just going to be like, we're going to start with the lightest and work our way down so that we're not like jumping right into like the worst of the allegations.
So everyone prepare yourselves for these allegations.
Yes, I want to tell everybody watching, there's going to be talk of SH and EDs and some very self-unaliving thoughts, very like intrusive thoughts, that kind of thing. Just there's a lot. These people have been through a lot, so I just want people to be aware, not to just like make a hard pivot. But several cast members are now speaking out about Love is Blind and its production company Kinetic Content, which I don't know why it's so hard for me to say that. Kinetic Content. It feels like it should roll off the tongue, but every time I've had to say the name, I'm like, Kinetic Content. I don't know. Kinetic Content. That's what it's called. They're being called out for alleged unethical production protocol. According to contestants, 20-hour workdays were the norm, and they would often fall asleep on camera during dates due to lack of sleep. Let's just start there. 20-hour workdays were the norm on this show.
Even the longest day I've ever worked on a set was 18 hours. That was one time, and thinking about doing that like 10 days in a row of 20 hours.
My longest day on a single set was like 17 and a half, only 17 and a half, right? And that was brutal. It just so happened that it backed up to because the casting companies that I worked with did not tell me that. I thought I was working Tuesday and Wednesday, and I was, but I was actually working Tuesday night overnight and then Wednesday morning, so they backed up to each other. So I worked 10 hours on Goosebumps 2, got wrapped at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and then went directly to the Impractical Jokers movie.
Oh gosh.
And worked 17 and a half hours.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the longest I've ever, or I remember I had 36 hours without sleep because I went to one set. The call time was like 3 p.m. and we didn't wrap until 5 a.m. And then I had a 7:45 call or 7:15 call time. But luckily it wasn't too far away. But pretty much when I was filming on the first set, I was just like, oh no, I have to be somewhere at 7:15. And I'm just like, this is taking a while. But luckily I was able to make it in time, and I didn't realize they never said it was going to be an overnight. But I should have thought like, 3 p.m. call time. But yeah, but thinking about them being up for 20 hours, maybe sleeping for 4, then waking up again and having to do that day after day does not sound fun, because even in that 32-hour period, I had to take like a 45-minute nap.
Yikes. Yeah. Long days, like long shooting days, are really, really normalized in the film industry, to the point where like me and people I know have been like, wow, we had a really short work day. And my family members will be like, well, how short was it? And I'm like, well, it was only like 8 hours. And they're like, so a normal work day?
Normal.
Like 12, going under 12 hours, I would always consider a short day when I was like doing like full-time background work, because you just work so long. Like everybody on set is working really long hours. So, but 20-hour work days, even for me, even in my experience, I'm like, that's a lot. That's a whole lot. Like, it's being tired enough that you're falling asleep on camera while you're dating somebody, like while you're on a date and cameras are on you. I can't imagine how tired you must be, That's really gotta suck.
I wonder what if production was like, wake up right now, or what production was doing in that moment, or if they just let it happen and the other person's like, hello, you okay?
I'm trying to think. I don't think I ever saw somebody fall asleep. This could be a false memory just because I've been reading so much about this, but I think if there was one time where somebody fell asleep, they just kind of made it out to be like, oh, the guy was so boring. But looking back, I'm like, if I'm actually remembering that correctly, it's mostly just like, oh, no, she was so overworked and exhausted. But I'll have to go back and look. Somebody let me know if that's a real thing or if my brain made that up.
The wonders of editing.
Yes, Spencer. No, I'm just kidding. I'll figure it out. Also, during this 10-day period, they were filming in a windowless soundstage and only got to see sunlight when they used a bathroom in a trailer outside. It sounds like a honey wagon, right? The only time that they were seeing light outside was when they were going out to briefly use the bathroom. This has happened to me before. I worked core on a show where like we were always in the soundstage that obviously has no windows, and so like I would go, like we would go in when the sun was down and we would leave when the sun had gone back down and just be like, I saw sun none today. I was in a dark room and I was in the moonlight, and that was it. Apparently this was the norm for them for that 10-day period, which sounds like it could easily trigger some depression, like for 10 days straight doing that. That sounds like a lot.
Unless they really need to use the restroom and they're like, oh, 10-1, oh no, the sunlight, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Go back in, and I'm back.
Your eyes trying to adjust, and you're like, I feel like a vampire.
I need sunscreen. You were only outside for 2 minutes. I've been inside so long.
It's also being alleged that upon arrival, contestants were placed in, and this is my words, what sounds like to me to be like diet solitary confinement. Participants were held in isolation for 24 hours, having their phones and passports taken away from them, and having to wait for hours on end for like food and water, and being told when and where they were allowed to sleep. Yeah. Yep. That's what's being alleged, partially. That's one of the things being alleged.
I mean, I know for some reality shows, they have a period of quarantine, even like before the panorama happened.
Yeah.
But hearing that they were told where and when to sleep, and the food would take a while to get there even before they were even on the show, that's very surprising to hear.
And like, I kind of understand like taking their phones, maybe, but they haven't seen set yet. So like, I have questions about why their phones needed to be taken away, if it was like a confidentiality thing, or if it was more of like they don't want them to see like social media and stuff kind of thing. I would have questions about that. But also, why take their passports away? That feels like you don't want them to be able to leave.
Probably. It's all about the control. They can threaten their trips to Mexico, where they're like, if you don't do what we want, you're not going to Mexico. I don't know.
Tell me if this sounds triggeringly familiar to you. Food was also insufficient, with one contestant saying, quote, get down to my quote, "They would run out of food often. I remember every time we'd get to the freaking kitchen, there'd be like one hard-boiled egg, and it was like a fight to see who could actually get this stuff." I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because sets notoriously, I've been on several sets that do not have enough food for the amount of people working there. I was once working a couple of years ago on a set that had primarily child actors and extras, and they ran out of food 2 days in a row. The parents were furious. I also would have been furious.
Or that just reminds you of on Squid Games, where food was like a little bit of water and a hard-boiled egg.
Yep.
And I think they would line up by their numbers, so people could like take food. Certain people can like take more food. There wasn't any rules against that. So if you're in the back of the line, you don't get anything, but it's still not a lot of food. So it'll just get you hangry. But I feel like they can give a little bit more than that. But I've heard, or I remember I was working on core with a contestant who was on RuPaul's Drag Race, and they were on for a few episodes, but they said how they would not feed them properly or give them water. And I know if they had diet, or at least in the early season of this show or in Drag Race, they didn't really compensate for dietary restrictions. So, and I remember hearing about Latrice Royale lost a bunch of weight because they just didn't, I don't think Latrice had any dietary restrictions, but they just weren't given enough food. So it's like, I understand the why they would do that, but it's still like inhumane feeling to give them that little food.
I once worked on a really low budget TV movie, and my friend and I were both on there. And not funny, but it's kind of funny in hindsight. They had they made a big deal about not wanting to feed the extras food. Like, they just didn't want to feed them lunch, which, in case you've never worked on a film set, you're not allowed to leave, right? So there's no, like, okay, you can go and, like, get lunch somewhere. Like, occasionally, like, things like Family Feud will be like, you have an hour to get through Atlanta traffic and find something to eat and be back here in time if you don't want us to be mad at you. But usually you're not allowed to leave. So, like, they have to give you lunch. They can't just hold you somewhere and deny you food for, like, 12 hours on end. That's illegal. for obvious reasons. So, but they didn't want to do this on this one low budget set, and there were only like 10 or 12 extras. I remember why, and I'll tell you why in a second, but there were only like a dozen extras. And so it wasn't like you can't just send a dozen extras through the crew line to like let them get food anyway. Like you can easily feed an extra 12 people on this movie set, even if it's low budget, you know? So at one point, the PA comes out with a bag of those, you know, like cuties, like the little tangerines. He comes out and he's like, here are 10 tangerines. I know there are 12 of you, but fight amongst yourselves. It's not funny, but it's like,
yeah, it's more of a nervous laughter, but
it's more of a, this is so ridiculous that I can't believe that's like an actual thing that I can say and be like, nope, that happened.
Oh gosh. So, yeah, it's just telling some individual stories about what has gone on. They're like, that really happened? And it's like, yeah, that I remember I was on a show and there weren't a lot of extras there, so we got to go through the crew line and it was fine. The next day we went through the background lunch line, and I kid you not, there was literally 4 metal trays filled with green goop of different colors.
Sorry.
And then there was one with like quote unquote cheesy potatoes. And I put it in quotes because
I was going to ask why the cheesy potatoes were in quotes.
Because the potatoes weren't really cooked that well.
Ugh.
And the cheese was like separating from the potatoes, and there was oil, and I was just like, where's the bread? Or I don't need to eat that much. I can just drink water. But yeah, there are some times where the crew gets the good food, as they deserve good food because they're working hard. But on the flip side, they're like, oh, let's just give extras just this random stuff that we found. And I'm just like, oh, well. And I know there are some people out there that are like, they don't have to feed you. And it's like, but they do.
If you're not letting people have a break to leave and go get lunch, which almost no set does because that takes a ton of time and they don't want to risk anybody leaving and not coming back, you've got to feed. Like, you can't hold people all day and then not feed them. That's just genuinely like against like laws, especially when you're dealing with children, which is why when certain sets have children and they run out of food, I get extra like, why would you let this happen kind of thing. Real quick, the TV movie, the Tangerine set, as I'm now calling it, eventually the 12 extras had put up enough of a fight that we were quickly allowed to go and get, I think they gave us pizza or something. So we did eventually get food, but we had to like make a big deal for it. And they like acted like it was like, oh, I can't believe these, you know, prima donna extras want to eat tonight.
That's such a weird thing to think about, where it's just like, hi, can we just have some food? And they're
Please.
like, no. And it's just like, what do you expect will happen if we're not given food when you could give us food? But I'm sure they're just like, oh, the extras will sit down and be quiet.
Moving on to the sleeping conditions of how they were kept during this. I guess this is still in the first 10-day period where they're in the pod period, if you will, the most important part of the show before everything else just turns into like generic dating show, you know. All 15 female contestants were put into one single trailer to sleep in, and all 15 men in another trailer. It was said to be cold and uncomfortable with no privacy. They were only moved to hotels after cockroaches were seen infesting the trailers, and even then the PAs stood guard at the doors to make sure no one left their rooms. So they begrudgingly put them in hotels and then made the PAs stand guard at the doors, so they were not allowed to like leave for any reason.
I know on RuPaul's Drag Race, they do that because in early seasons, the queens would sneak out. And I think they went to a club at one point to celebrate one of the contestants' birthday. But instead of having a PA at every door, they just would put duct tape. And if if they saw the duct tape had moved, then it's like, oh, that person left their room.
Yeah, if that was the only thing that was a little bit sus with this set, I might be like, well, maybe there was a prior incident or maybe something. But altogether, especially when you hear like they took their passports and there wasn't enough food and they were in these cockroach infested trailers and all this stuff, it starts to paint this picture of like, these poor people a little bit.
Yeah.
So moving on, contestants weren't even allowed to listen to music on bus rides to and from set.
Just give them iPods. Why can't you just have like, or just everyone choose an iPod and then put it back when we're done going to set? But
something like, if you really don't want them to have their phones, like, I don't know.
That's when I would oh gosh, I would just rebel one day and just start singing copyrighted music so they can't use that footage. And I'm just like, give me an iPod so I can listen to it to and from set, and then I'll be good. But I'm sure they'd be like, get out. And I'd be like, okay.
You're just sitting in like the interview room and you're like, gimme a minute after midnight.
Oh, at first I thought you were going to say, give me more. Give me more. Give me more.
That one would work too. Production assistants escorted cast members everywhere. This happens with, I'm not saying that this is like, this makes it like good or bad or whatever. I'm just saying this happens with like big actors too. Like, I know PAs are like, I always feel weird because sometimes the PAs will be like, I feel weird because I got assigned to be so and so's like watch PA. So like literally they're just spending their day like stalking them around. Like the actor will be like trying to make a phone call and the PA's like over there like, where you going, actor? You have no privacy. Like, I need to make sure I know where you are at all times. So that was happening to the contestants. They escorted them everywhere, including to the bathroom. They wouldn't even let them go to the bathroom on their own, which feels a little excessive.
Well, I'm just like, you're standing outside the honey wagon, right?
Hopefully. I hope so. I would assume so.
It's just like, look at this window. You think I'm going to fit through that tiny window on the side? Just stay out here.
Like, even as an extra, I've been able to, like, go to the bathroom at least on my own. You can't go anywhere else on your own, but at least it's like, there's the bathroom. I'm going 10-1. I'll be back.
Yeah, we just have to make sure we tell someone sometimes, because sometimes it's like, we may need you back quickly. Where's this person?
Or like and if I'm standing in, I'll like tell people, or I've been on like group chats where I'm just like, so if you need me, I'm going to the bathroom. So it's like, where's so-and-so? Oh, Avery's in the bathroom. Oh, okay. That's okay. Like, or if it's not okay, they can't do anything about it because, like, you have to pee sometimes.
Exactly. First thing I do when I get to set is find the restroom, just so I know.
Yep. The PAs were forbidden from speaking with the contestants. Quote, we were told if a girl comes on the bus and she feels self-conscious or feeling bad about herself, don't respond, said a production assistant on seasons 2 and 3, who asked to remain anonymous for professional reasons. I wonder why.
That sounds like the Shelley Duvall treatment in The Shining.
Yeah.
And they did that to or Stanley Kubrick did that to like help her mental state deteriorate.
Yeah, that's also something that could be an episode all on its own. That poor woman, rock star to Shelley Duvall. She needs more respect. But to go on, the PA said, just ice her. That weird cult vibe of don't talk to them, they can't talk to you. It's all about the isolation, which I think is insidious. I know that there's like a lot, and it makes me feel bad because there's a lot of times where like you're on set and there's like a famous person and people will be like, don't bother them. Like, don't fangirl over them. Let them do their work because they're probably like preparing for a scene or whatever. But there is this weird thing where like, even just like everybody's afraid that even just saying hi to the actor is going to get them in trouble. So the actor will walk into the room and everybody just stops talking. And I'm like, can you imagine you go to work, you walk into a room of like all of your coworkers like chit-chatting, and then as soon as they realize you're there, they all stop. Like, that's gotta be really lonely. I feel bad sometimes. I'm like, guys, this is not helping.
But then there's like a PA or a director or something where it's like, hello, person I can talk to, and all the background are just like, duh. I remember one time I was on a movie and there was a famous actor there who has a movie coming out soon, but by the time of this podcast, it might have already come out. But what happened was the extras holding was on the second floor of a building, and right down the hall was the green room for the actor. And so there were these dual staircases, and there was like a big window next to the staircases, and I positioned myself by one of the windows where I knew the actor would come up, just so I could say, hey, this actor was near me. I didn't say anything to this person.
You just were like, I want to be in the vicinity and not bother them, but just be able to be like, they walked past me in the hallway.
Exactly. But I think there were two other extras that kind of caught on to what I was doing. And so the actor walks by me and I'm like, okay, I'm cool. This is cool. I'm just going to walk away. The other guy goes the other way and is like, hey, you're so-and-so to the actor. And and I'm just like, we're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to talk to them.
Don't bother them.
Because they're just like, we don't want any crazed fans here. Don't talk to the actor unless the actor talks to you, which has happened to me. I might talk about it later, but this was not one of those cases. So it's like, it can be, so like in that scenario, like don't talk to them. But
and like, to be clear, like in most cases, I assume there probably are one or two, but like usually it's just the actors' people being like, don't bother them. It's not like the actors like, don't look at me. It's like the actors' people are like, let them do their job and not be weird around them. Because I have I've met actors. I remember Natasha and I met an actor at Con, and he said something about, certain culture of like people like being nice to him or not being nice to him on set. And we were like, oh, like if anybody is like ever like not talking to you, just it's not you, like you didn't do anything. It's just that they were like threatened to not. And he was like, oh, and it was like he was rethinking like every professional interaction he'd ever had. It was just like, oh no. And I was like, oh no, and now I feel bad. The extent to which he did not know, and he was like, oh. So yeah, so that was apparently happening with the PAs were not allowed to, back to Love is Blind, to talk to the contestants, which feels weird, because it's not the same as like let them work. This just feels like let them feel insecure and stew on that. It makes for better TV is kind of the accusation that's being put out there. Unlike water, apparently alcohol was always available, and one contestant is alleging that he was forced to film drunk one time. Yeah. To go on, the sinks in the on-set lounges didn't work, so contestants had to ask production assistants to bring them bottled water. The production assistant said requests for water were sometimes intercepted by a producer who would suggest bringing alcohol along with it or instead. Allegedly. This is all alleged. This is alleged. Did we already say this before? This is alleged.
This is everything you're hearing from Love is Blind is alleged.
I need it on my soundboard, just like a whoop, whoop. This is alleged. Or you
could just have that soundbite. Whoop, whoop. Alleged.
Yeah, we'll put one of those on the soundboard and just for future reference. But yes, obviously this is all alleged. We weren't there. But isn't that like, if that's true, that's crazy.
I mean, just keep or they're tired, they may try to use it as a pick-me-up. It'll make things more interesting. Like after hearing about stuff that goes on in America's Next Top Model, because there's a YouTuber by the name of they're more than a YouTuber, but they go by, or their YouTube channel is Oliver Twix, and they interview top model contestants. And so hearing that, I'm like, I'm not surprised, but that's like one of the more extreme things I've heard happen on a reality TV show. So I'm not surprised if it is true.
Yeah. One day during the pod period, Danielle Rule was drinking champagne. This is a contestant. When she fainted, she hadn't eaten, slept, or drank enough water, she said, but a crew member insisted on giving her a COVID-19 test, because apparently at this point of the time, this was season 2, so at this point COVID had already started, was what happened. Because the first season was done before. They insisted on giving her a COVID test. The test came back negative, yet rather than getting Rule medical attention, producers had her do an on-camera interview immediately after passing out. That was it, Rule said. I had to go right back into it. We're not even to the really bad stuff yet, if you can believe it. This is just like the warm-up stuff.
Gosh, I just want to know what happened in these producers' lives where they're just like, so she passed out, get her back on camera.
Yikes. One contestant tells a story in the piece from Insider about avoiding drinking until one day she made an offhand joke about a specific kind of liquor, and all of a sudden she was brought not 1 but 4 bottles just for her. So she wasn't drinking because she did not want to be like drunk or tipsy on camera, because she's like, I've seen how that goes for people. That doesn't go well. But the one day she just offhandedly mentions like this specific kind of liquor, 4 bottles show up, and they're like, please drink alcohol.
My gosh.
Yep.
I'll be like, give me a gallon of water and you got a deal. But I don't know.
Yikes. Again, this is from Insider. The production assistant said producers frequently told PAs to top off contestants' alcoholic beverages, especially for the dates. We were constantly refilling their glasses, the PA said. A season 2 cast member said producers encouraged her to take a shot of whiskey right before she met her fiance face-to-face for the first time, telling her that everyone else had done the same. Hey kids, everyone's doing it. You know?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure. Everyone takes a shot before they meet their fiance in person for the first time. Everyone's doing it. Later, she said she found out she was the only one who'd taken a shot. I didn't get drunk the whole time because I was really careful, she said. Still, they made me look like I was a party girl. They were like, drink alcohol. Everybody's doing it. And then, like, she was the only one who did it. So they were like, oh my God, look at the lush over here. Like, I think I know exactly. I don't want to, like, name them, but I think I know who this is referring to because I remember them being one specific girl. If it was in one of the first 2 seasons, yeah, there was one specific girl where we were like, ooh, she's drinking a lot of wine. Like, that was, like, the thing, right? It was like, there's so-and-so. She's drunk all the time. And apparently, according to her, it was not like that.
I remember on America's Next Top Model, you might bring this up, so I won't say specifically, but there was a contestant where they, for personal reasons, they like to drink wine, not to get drunk, but just to kind of calm themselves down. And so they showed kind of like a montage of the contestant with a lot of wine, but she's like, I was there for several weeks. That's over a period of time of several weeks, but they put it all in one spot and made me look like I was doing it all the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, oh, the editing. So, and I'm just like, I want to be on a reality TV show, but I'm so scared of my edit they would put out of me.
And then if you're like, oh, well, the edit made me look bad, everybody rolls their eyes and it's like, yeah, everybody says that, right? Because it's like, it sounds weird, but it's like, no, you don't understand. It happens. Like, the shady editing is real.
Yeah, I mean, RuPaul came out with a song that says "Blame it on the edit."
Blame it on the edit.
And now available on iTunes, and it's kind of unfair to a lot of the contestants because there are still contestants that are from season 4 of Drag Race. We just finished season 15 now. There's a contestant from season 4 that's still getting hate, even though a lot of people have said this person is not a bad person. This edit did this to them. The production told them to do this. They were just following instructions. They're a good person.
Yep.
Leave them alone.
Now we're going to talk directly about, like, mental health. So just to give another warning, just to give extra adequate warnings, we're directly talking with, like, people having, like, anxiety attacks and things. The quote from a contestant: the combination of sleep deprivation, isolation, lack of food, and an excess of alcohol, all either required, enabled, or encouraged by defendants, contributed to inhumane working conditions and altered mental state for the cast. Hang on, let me double check my notes to make sure I'm getting his first name right before I say it. Sorry, Spencer. Jeremy Hartwell, who is the contestant bringing the complaint forward. He's the one, like, filing the actual lawsuit, I guess. That's a quote from him. That's a quote from his complaint specifically. Like, the allegations that he's alleging in court. Danielle Drowan, I really hope I said that person's name correctly, alleged the sleep deprivation was real. I feel like they do it on purpose because they're trying to break you. They want you on your edge, which I've heard from before. People are like, oh, we want people to have, like, mental breakdowns. That makes for better TV. And it's just like, ugh. Another contestant named Brianna Holmes apparently was having trouble breathing, ran off set and collapsed on the stairs of the hair and makeup trailer, crying and having a full-blown panic attack, all while being chased by cameramen out of the building and to the place where she ended up having the panic attack.
I'm not surprised. And I kind of feel bad for the cameraman because the cameraman might be told by the producers, like, hey, you could be, it's like, if you don't follow instructions, you will never work in Hollywood again.
It's not necessarily their choice. Yeah. We're not saying it was necessarily them that was like, get the shot, but somebody's idea was that, and that was a bad idea. It's a very bad idea. She quit the show after that, which good for her, by the way. Though it's worth noting that contestants all signed contracts that included a clause stating that if any cast member who left the show without production's approval could be fined up to $50,000 in damages against the show. So they're like, oh, we're just taking them and putting them in this windowless room and telling them they can't leave and taking their passport away. I don't know why they're thinking that they couldn't leave this whole time. Where are these accusations coming from?
Oh, gosh. And I'm sure a lot of people out there are like, but they signed contracts. They knew what they were getting into. And it's like, but this is all coming out now after 4 seasons of this show. And I'm sure they're not allowed to talk about it, or else production's like, we could sue you for a lot of money. And I'm sure and it's just like, oh, if you say this, then no one will sign up and we could sue you so much money.
Also, people are coerced into signing. Not saying that this happened with this thing, but like people feel pressured and or kind of like enticed to signing things that are not in their best interest all the time. So like give a little bit of grace. Don't be like, well, they signed a contract saying that they might not be allowed to eat all the time. I don't know why they're complaining about it.
Yeah.
They were not apparently worried about the contestants' damages, with the interview and filming tactics being described as emotional warfare. Participants were asked excruciatingly personal and triggering questions. One man was grilled on a particularly brutal past relationship for over 20 minutes, and at the end, he was weeping openly on camera.
I'm not surprised by that.
No, none of this is shocking, but not surprising. Very briefly, we're going to talk about ED. So just for a second, skip like 5 minutes if you don't want to hear this. But another woman confided in a producer that she had struggled with her weight and eating disorders, only to have it become a main plot line for her on the show, with producers asking her questions in interviews such as, do you feel worthy of your fiance? And do you think he'll still love you if you gain weight?
Yeah, unfortunately, if you're going on a reality TV show, if you don't want something to go out there, you cannot tell anybody. Do not confide any secrets, unfortunately, because they will exploit it. And there have been, back to America's Next Top Model, there have been contestants who gain 3 pounds or 5 pounds, and they're like, you've gained weight. How does that make you feel? There was a contestant that they said was losing weight, and then they eliminated her because they're like, you're insecure. We can't have you around here. And it's just like, well...
Yikes. Yikes on drugs. It's one of those things where it's like you can't trust them with anything, unfortunately. And that's not the contestants' fault. They should be able to trust people to not like completely exploit them. But it's reality TV in a capitalist society, so they absolutely will do that, unfortunately. Yikes.
And you have to remember that the individuals you see on these reality TV shows are caricatures of who they really are. They might the edit might focus on one aspect of them, but that's not necessarily who they are in real life. They're acting for a TV show, quote unquote. The only thing reality is the setting of it all.
Yep. During one pod date where 2 people were involved in an intense conversation over the death of their parents, a producer said basically, fuck you, we're gonna move on, and kicks them out right into another date. It was just like, I know you're in like the middle of like a really serious conversation, but also we need like more shots. So get out and get into the next spot. And apparently it was just really like not humane really at all in the way that they like handled. Like I haven't heard any stories so far, and that doesn't mean that they don't exist, but like nobody's coming forward and being like, oh, this producer was so nice to me. This producer was great. You know, it's like, no, this producer like made me suicidal. We're going to talk about that. Another incident involved the participant being blocked from calling her twin siblings on their birthday. They had told her that she could beforehand, and then on the day, they're like, no, you can't do that. Why? I don't know.
Oh, gosh, that reminds me of America's Next Top Model, where there was an all-star season, and a lot of them are told, like, hey, you'll be able to talk about your business ventures to help further your brand, but then they just cut all that out. And it's just like broken promises.
Yep. All right. We're going to talk about the allegations surrounding people's self-unaliving thoughts, which is very terrible, but it's kind of really important. So this is a quote from Insider. 3 cast members told Insider that they had panic attacks while filming, and one said producers pressured her to stay on the show even after she confided that she was having suicidal thoughts. Unquote from the article. Season 2 contestant Danielle Rule stated she was surprised she passed the psychological screening since she'd allegedly disclosed a past suicide attempt. She allegedly was wary of hidden cameras being placed in her room which is fair because like she's, you know, being pushed to her limit and she's exhausted and she's like, I don't trust them to not have cameras on me at all time. I can definitely see how she would think that. She was wary about this. She ended up curled up in a closet at one point, and they edited this moment to appear as if she was simply having a tantrum over her fiance going to a party without her. I remember this moment very clearly, and like everybody dragged her online for this. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, people online, please be nice because you don't know the circumstances, and it's not cool to just rag on someone for a moment on a reality TV show. You can have opinions, but just like don't drag people. Like don't tell them to their face because you might not know what's actually going on.
Yeah, just be like, that's kind of weird if that's actually what happened, but like keep in mind that it might just not be what happened at all, and there could be very, you know, much deeper things going on. To his credit, her fiance Nick, upon arriving back to their room and realizing what happened, apparently took off his mic and threw it at the producers, saying that the couple was tired of being exploited and they made a play to leave together. So good for him. He supported her. That's good. That's what he should have done. That is not the end of the story, however. Because they did not end up getting to leave the show. Producers managed to talk them into staying, promising that they would be portrayed sympathetically and that, quote, they were the love story of the season.
Get it in writing. There's a situation you might have to remind me of on America's Next Top Model where the producers are like, we'll do this. And the person's like, put it in writing and sign it.
Yep.
And the person was like, I have a contract. So if you want to be on a reality TV show and there's some kind of, and if producers are promising you something, get it in writing. And if not, then you might have to just be like, bye. But yeah.
It shouldn't surprise anybody at this point in the story that therapy was allegedly not provided. You've talked about this being an issue that people have talked about recently on America's Next Top Model, that like therapy was not adequately provided, which it's supposed to be. But many cast members sought therapy on their own after filming for depression and other mental and emotional issues. One woman even quit her job because she felt unable to return to her old life in the aftermath of the show. Like, that's how, like, messed up she felt after dealing with this whole experience, which is really sad. She says, quote, you're thrust into the situation without any support and everything is amplified. You're thrust into this situation without any support and everything's amplified, Nick Thompson, season 2 contestant, said, the fiance of the girl who was in the closet. It literally ruined lives, he said. That was his quote, which is a lot. Getting into the actual, let's move on to the actual, like, lawsuit that's being brought. A lawsuit is being brought against Netflix and Kinetic Connections by season 2 cast member Jeremy Hartwell for inhumane working conditions and paying contestants less than minimum wage. Let's get into that now. Yep. If you're not watching the video version of this and you're just listening, Gabe just gave me Gabe's eyebrows just like hit the ceiling. It was
my
just
eyes were wide. My eyebrows are to the ceiling. Yeah.
To quote again directly from Insider, once contestants are cast, they sign a contract agreeing to be recorded 24/7 for up to 8 weeks for a weekly stipend of $1,000 that has a cap at $8,000. So if they were to go over that 8-week thing in their contract, they can't get paid any more money.
That's why you're like, oh, you write up another contract if you want to film me some more.
It gets worse than that, too, because that is a weekly stipend of $1,000. In Hartwell's lawsuit, he argues that Kinetic Content willfully misclassified contestants as independent contractors instead of employees, which meant that their $1,000 weekly stipend translated to about $7.14 an hour, less than half of the $15 minimum wage in California where filming in the pods took place after seasons 1. Months after Hartwell filed his lawsuit, he discovered Kinetic had sent him a tax form allegedly used to, a W-2 tax form used to report wages for employees. So the whole thing about like how they were classified is I guess something that's going to be argued in court. But basically, they're alleging that the math worked out to be they were making $7 an hour for all of this.
That's not enough. Even
Yep.
background gets paid more than that now.
In California, too.
In California, if you're a background extra, they pay you if you bring your own wardrobe.
That's insane. I didn't know that for the longest time. You told me that, actually, and I was like, what? Because, like, here, you're required to. They'll yell at you if you don't bring your own clothes. Like,
yeah. Oh, gosh. There's a story that I tell a lot of the time where I was on a show. Sorry to, like, interrupt this intense moment. But there was a time when, you know, or it's just like, we're not getting paid to bring our own clothes. I try to bring something because there are sometimes people are like, I didn't bring anything. And the wardrobe's just like, okay, here you go. But I remember I was on a set and it was supposed to be for a hipster Christmas party. So I'm like, flannel, blue jeans, good to go. Apparently that was not the case because the wardrobe person looked at all I brought and was just like, so did you just not read what the wardrobe notes that were given? Or did you just not read what the wardrobe notes were, or did you just not have anything? And I brought options. I brought several different tops to wear and I think another pair of pants. And so he completely changes my look from flannel and blue jeans to a button-up black shirt and black pants. And then long story short, I got sent back to the line, had to wait 45 minutes, went to another wardrobe person who put me in the same exact thing I came in, except for put a coat over it. And I asked them, oh, am I good? And or in the video you can see me, but they just gave me the up down look and just like with like a lot of like we're just like and so it's just like, oh, wardrobe. Thank you.
I've had hair and makeup people complain about my hair being too curly and me having too many bags under my eyes. And I'm like, I'm sorry that my face is the way that it is.
We're not paid enough to like change our faces for this. I'm sorry. One
makeup lady looked at me and went, wow, we really did our makeup early and in the dark this morning, didn't we? And I was like, I'm not claiming to be the best at makeup, but why'd you have to say it like that?
It's just, I know you're probably annoyed that you have to do 50 background, but is being mean to people like...
They're like, it's our favorite part of the job.
And
I'm just kidding.
Well, after seeing people's reactions to background, I'm like, oh, this is how PAs can just ignore contestants. They're like, I remember that day I worked with 100 background and it was terrible. I will get my revenge now. Not saying that that's what PAs and wardrobe people and hair and makeup people do. This is just a funny assumption to try to break the tension and all this craziness.
Again, quoting from the article, contestants must also acknowledge that being on Love is Blind might destroy their reputations. The contract says appearing on the show may expose information that is personal, private, surprising, defamatory, disparaging, embarrassing, or unfavorable and open them up to public ridicule, humiliation, or condemnation. From what I hear, this is pretty typical with reality TV. I don't know that this is necessarily like something against this show specifically or just a warning against all reality TV, but like they're basically like, we will exploit you for all you're worth on this show. We do not care about your feelings. We do not care about your life. If it's going to make for good TV, we're going to put it on national TV. Like, it's just like, ooh, yikes. Again, this is all alleged. Kinetic has denied Hartwell's claims, saying that they have no merit. But there are several different contestants alleging very similar things. So I personally don't necessarily believe that this is all like fake. You know, I believe them when they say these things are happening. Partially because we've just heard about this happening from other shows. Kinetic responded to the report, telling Variety in a statement, this is really messed up, but this is like funny in a messed up way. This is their quote. Kinetic Content's quote, responding to the guy bringing the lawsuit. This is their quote. The first part says, the well-being of our participants is of paramount importance to Kinetic. We have rigorous protocols in place to care for each person before, during, and after filming. That's not the thing that I find darkly funny. This is what I find darkly funny. They go on to say, quote, Mr. Hartwell's involvement in season 2 of Love is Blind lasted less than 1 week. Unfortunately for Mr. Hartwell, his journey ended early after he failed to develop a significant connection with any other participant, Kinetic said in a statement to Variety at the time. While we will not speculate as to his motives for filing the lawsuit, there is absolutely no merit to Mr. Hartwell's allegations, and we will vigorously defend against his claims. You know when somebody gets called out, like an influencer gets called out, and they're like, I don't even know who that person is, right? And they're like, that's their defense. It's the same energy, but kinetic content is just like, well, I mean, since he's so alone and lonely and couldn't get a fiance, maybe that's why he hates us so much.
He's just bitter because he couldn't find a connection, and so he's retaliating against the show, and everything he's saying is wrong, and he's just bitter. It's all his fault. Gaslighting.
Like, legally, I don't know what I would expect from them to say, because I guess they don't want to have to like pay a bunch of money in this lawsuit, obviously, but it does definitely give it definitely gives off the energy of like, well, you dumb loser virgin, maybe if you weren't so lonely, you would have seen that us torturing people was really for the greater good. Like, that's kind of how it comes across to me. And every time I read it, I'm just like, ouch.
Or it's just like, oh, none of the other contestants have come forward. And it's just like, well, why do you think?
The girl that had the panic attack and said she was having like self-harm thoughts, like, she ended up getting married and later divorced, but she ended up getting married, like, and was married to that fiance that tried to leave with her for like a couple of years. Like, so like the idea of like, oh, he's just angry because he didn't meet anybody feels strange to me, you know?
Yeah.
This is not, I have more notes. Let's get into in the aftermath of the show. Sorry, that was my knee.
Sorry, Spencer.
Some contestants went through all of this for mere seconds of screen time in the end and didn't even match with anyone. Still others were portrayed as villains, and because of this were harassed online. One person had accusations of being racist and homophobic due to what she says was manipulative editing, which I don't know if that's true or not. Like, she might have said something that angered people for real. I don't know specifically, but that's what she claims. But here's the thing. Apparently people harassed her to the point where they even started sending messages to her pastor telling him to kick her out of the church because she was, quote, evil and the Antichrist.
Well, this reminds me of on RuPaul's Drag Race on season 15, there was a point where two of the contestants got into, like, it wasn't even a fight. It was just like a disagreement on who got second place in a challenge. And one of the contestants got their Instagram blocked they had their Instagram account taken down 3 times. Yikes. Because so many people were reporting them because they were mad that they had the audacity to argue with their fave. And it's just like, I'm not surprised, but just like, can we leave people alone? If they say something that can be seen as ignorant, maybe educate a little bit and not talk to their pastor saying that they're the Antichrist.
Well, even like, it's okay to be like, I don't like that person because of what they said or their beliefs. Like, you don't have to be like, well, I have to be like nice about this person or like them, but maybe contacting their pastor is a little far.
Yeah, it's like, stick to Reddit, everybody.
Yeah, I don't know. That just was one story that stuck out to me because I was like, damn, you called the pastor on her.
I mean, who is this? Why are you calling me? Delete blog. That would be interesting to be like, hey, Avery, so-and-so said this on this show. You shouldn't be friends with them anymore. And it's just like, go away, block. But I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen that happen to some people where it's just like, you're not weighing in on this controversy that your friend is in. And it's just like, but they don't necessarily have to, like, depending on the situation. Like, I don't know, but it's just like, you can't control what other people do. Like, the pastor is not going to be like, damn, somebody that in my congregation screwed up, I'm now kicking them out of the whole church.
They said this on this TV show, which is highly edited and might not even be in context, but
like, there are definitely situations where I could see somebody being famous enough and influential enough where, like, people who have connections with them, you know, probably should be saying like, hey, that's not okay what they did.
Yeah.
But the pastor, like, that's just pastor.
The fact that they found the pastor is
that's
so
scary.
Weird.
Yeah, they managed to find her pastor, which means they did some digging on her social media.
Yeah, just watching reality shows and seeing the level people will dig and the information they find. Like I remember on early seasons of Vanderpump Rules, that could be a whole nother episode with Scandival.
Oh
but
boy!
Even before that,
oh God, a Scandival episode. No.
Oh gosh, people are everyone's involved or everyone's getting their intriguement like upped again. I don't know, but just like in early seasons where they're like, oh, I found this girl that you met when you went to Florida that one time and I brought her here to the show.
Yikes.
And at first you think that the girlfriend is crazy for bringing this person, but then you're like, oh, it was true the entire time. But
Yikes.
It's just like, oh, some of the digging people will do, the how far they're willing to go.
When Moana said how far I'll go,
yes.
It was not a challenge to Twitter trolls.
The line where the sky meets the sea, they're going past that. They're going so far they can see the back of their heads, you know? That's how. And Moana's like, don't bring me into this. I don't want to be involved with Twitter trolls.
Moana would like to be excluded from this narrative.
Oh, there are so many times where if someone's saying stuff or I'm getting into an argument with someone, I'm like, okay, you're bringing up this narrative that I do this, but I do not do that. And what you're not going to do is continue this narrative because I am not about that. And I'm just like, oh no, I'm the reality TV show of it all.
Oh, some contestants who reached out to Kinetic for support after filming said they were ignored or met with outright aggression. A few cast members said that they received a handful of sporadic check-ins after filming from a mental health professional hired by Kinetic, but that it wasn't enough. When one contestant would tell this mental health expert things like, "My marriage is falling apart," they would respond with, "Okay, let us know what we can do, if we can do anything."
The mental health expert is asking if there's something they can do to help.
It's like, well, okay, I lost my place. I can also hear the birds. They're like, we would like to be included in this narrative.
We want to be on the podcast too.
Okay, so later, after that guy who would be like, my marriage is falling apart, and they'd be like, me too, crazy, right?
Wow.
That guy, when he eventually had when his wife eventually filed for divorce, unfortunately, TMZ latched onto this story, and soon he was being harassed by people speculating online that he was an abusive husband, a narcissist, or secretly gay. And that's why the marriage ended. Wildly inappropriate things for anybody who's not involved in the marriage to be speculating on.
People will latch onto anything, and I don't know. I'm sure someone was like, here's some evidence I found, but it was completely unfounded. I don't know.
Like, as far as I can tell, his wife has not, like, said anything about, like, him being a bad person or being, not interested in her or anything. This is just like, oh, I watched the show and there's this one scene where he does this one thing and that's how the marriage all fell apart, is what I could find. And it's just like, oh God, this is dystopian. I don't like this at all. He said that it got so bad he was scared to pick up his phone, which is sad. Kinetic Connections was actually a huge help, so much to the point that they called to assure him during this difficult time that they weren't going to sue him, even though their contracts forbade divorce after the show.
I'm making a face again. What?
They're like, it's okay, we're not going to sue you for getting divorced. That feels like something you can't just put in a contract, right? That feels like it wouldn't hold up in court to be like, Your Honor, they got divorced and we had them sign a thing saying that wasn't going to happen, so now we want money from them.
It's like, what money are you gonna get from this? And why do you care if people get divorced? Because it's like, oh, the dating show where people don't know each other and they're being fed alcohol instead of water. The marriage didn't work out after 3 weeks or 8 weeks. What do you mean?
We're doing this very serious social experiment to find out if people really can fall in love based on vibes only. Why are we so successful? Because they're not allowed to get divorced after.
Yeah, that's what people... Well, I'm sure there might be people who are emotionally attached, and it's just like, oh, no, they got divorced, but I don't think it's that serious to where... They should sue people.
I mean, a handful of couples are still married to this day. Most of them are concentrated in like the newest season. So like, not that we're rooting for them to break up, but like seasons 1 through 3, most everybody is broken up at this point. Whereas season 4, everybody's like, we're mostly doing great. And it's just like one of the couples that's still married hasn't even moved in together yet, even though they're married. So it's like, I don't know what the success rate on this is. The only like really successful couple is from season 1. The only couple, actually, that's not true. There are 2 couples still married from season 1. But the couple, Cameron and Lauren, who were like the breakout stars because they were just genuinely a very cute couple. Everybody liked them. They're apparently still married like 4 or 5 years later, which good for them. We love that for them. We love that it worked out for them. But yeah, the success rate is sketchy at best with this show. So like the idea of like, you can't get divorced because it'll look bad on us is just like, ugh.
I mean, how many couple are, and all the years of The Bachelor, how many of those couples are still married? I think The Bachelorette has more successful relationships. I don't know, maybe women are better at choosing spouses than men, or allegedly. But yeah, you look at can you imagine if The Bachelor was just like, if you break up in like the first year of like getting engaged, at the end of the show we're gonna sue you? Like that's like but like how many other dating shows have people broken up?
I mean, it's clearly not something they feel like they can enforce, right? Or that they wouldn't enforce because they haven't sued anybody yet. There's been like over a dozen couples, like way more than half of all the couples that got engaged and got married got divorced. So like they clearly aren't planning to enforce it. So this guy, it was in his contract in season 2. So like if they didn't enforce it in the first season, why put it in the contract unless you're trying to like intimidate them to like try to make the show look better? You know what I mean? Like, again, I don't know anything. I'm not saying that's what they did. I'm just curious as to why you would put something in a contract if you're obviously not going to take anybody to court, because what judge is going to be like, you're right, you signed a contract saying you can't get divorced. Sorry.
And it's just like, are they keeping up with them after they get married to where a divorce would just ruin everything? Probably yeah, right? Not.
So I don't think a lot of people expect this to be like, oh my god, this is the miracle that dating needed. Like, this has solved everything.
All those other dating shows, forget them. Love is Blind is the best there is at creating real relations.
Nobody's turning on reality dating TV to be like, is this the answer to all of love? We're watching it for the cringe. We're watching it for the train wreck.
Oh, I always live for the, dating apps haven't really worked for me, so I want to try this, it's
Yeah, this show is big on the dating apps are so superficial. And it's like, okay, sure, dating apps are a flawed way to date people. I also don't like dating apps being the main way that people meet nowadays. But it's funny for them to be like, we're going to combat this superficiality by only casting people that could be models.
Exactly. Where's the average Joes? Like, have like half be kind of supermodels, half be average Joes, and then see how, then it'll be interesting. But then it might be like, oh, the supermodel might be like, oh, or the average Joe will be like, oh, you're not as pretty as I thought you were. And it's just like, oh, who do you have room to judge? How dare you? But I'm sure it's just like, look at all the pretty people wanting to not be superficial.
The original contestant who's bringing the claims in court said he was ignored when he tried to contact production over their mishandlings of the cast, and eventually was called by someone named Jay. Apparently they just identified themselves as Jay, who ended the call by telling him to fuck off and hung up on him. So Jay was very helpful. The show is also coming under fire from psychologists and mental health experts, claiming that the social experiment angle is rooted in nothing but pseudoscience. And expert and layman fans alike have questioned the show's decision to cast a man in season 3 who already had past allegations of assaulting a former partner. Again, I don't know like what's happening with that case, but that was something that, I guess came up in a background check, allegedly. Apparently the producers knew about this and they cast him anyway, and it's a big drama thing, allegedly. But I don't know. It's just they're just like, if you look up Love is Blind on YouTube right now, I'm sure you can find lots of people who know a lot about psychology, definitely more than I do, basically being like, okay, here is why this is an issue, right? Because it's encouraging and enabling these patterns in relationships which are just fundamentally not going to work well. So that's like another note. And then this is also a quote from Insider. Some members who struggled after Love is Blind complained that the public wasn't sympathetic because they were the ones who had agreed to go on a reality show. Like we talked about the whole, like they signed a contract, but none of them knew exactly what they were signing up for. Quote, you have no idea what it's like until you experience it. I think that's fair. Like you don't really know how bad it can be, and you probably don't expect this when you're signing on, right? You don't expect, like, there's going to be no food or water sometimes, and you're not going to get to sleep for, like, a whole day on end, like...
And if you have a panic attack and want to leave for the sake of your mental health, you might get sued.
And you shouldn't have to expect those things, right? Like, that's just, like, common decency that they don't put you through those things. But what do I know? Maybe I'm just delusionally optimistic.
The background is the problem the whole time. Yeah, it comes from, I think a lot of people are just like, you should just grit your teeth and suck it up because this is what you signed up for. And it's just like, well, we need to kind of stop that mentality because it's that kind of mentality that's keeping these shows going.
I mean, there's been actual like first team actors who are like out here like getting into car accidents and being accused of driving drunk until it comes out that they're like just sleep deprived. Like that happened to, I believe, one of the casts of Riverdale, but I'll have to check myself. Yeah,
I believe it was. And I just remember reading comments from the Facebook posted an article, and I saw the comments, and pretty much nobody was sympathetic. They're just like, well, why not? Our nurses are on their feet all day and they're not getting in car accidents, which they are.
Yes, they are.
And it's just like, oh, they're actors. They could do this, that, and the other. They have their trailers that they can rest in. But it's just like and I'm like, none of these individuals probably have been on a film set because there can be times where an actor has to like go to a very emotional place and they might be emotionally drained and then they have to like go back, do it all again the next day. But yeah, some of the people were just not sympathetic, and it's like, can we have a little bit more sympathy for people who are going through some stuff? When someone gets into a car accident after being sleep deprived, your first thought shouldn't be, well, someone else has it worse than they haven't had a car accident. It's, I hope they are okay.
Yeah, I've been on like network like big TV shows where like the actors weren't even given like enough of a turnaround to like make it worth it for them to like go back to like wherever they were staying to sleep like in an actual bed. Like they just would stay in their trailers in the parking lot of the like in the sound studio parking lot, just because they were like, we have like maybe 6 hours before we have to be back here, so I'm just gonna spend that extra time that I could be commuting just sleeping on like the little fold out couch in my trailer. So it's like I've been like, when I was doing research for all this, I had to walk away at one point because I was feeling anxious because I was having this moment of like, oh, like going a long time without food or sleep or whatever. Like, yeah, we've all been through that. And then I was like, oh, we've all been through that. Like this industry is a lot. And it's like, it's weird to like, you kind of just like get used to like grit your teeth and bear it so much that like when you hear about like, and some of these things are,
sorry, Spencer.
Some of these things are obviously worse than I've dealt with, but it's also just like some of these things I can very much relate to just doing extra work. And it's like one of those things where it's a surreal experience for somebody to be like, for people outside of the industry to be like, what happened? And for me to like have that thing in my brain where like, I feel bad for this person. And also my brain is trying to connect that this is like a hugely big deal because we've been through it. And so like, you get so like accustomed to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really weird. And it's like, that should probably not happen anymore.
We should be treated like normal people and have and have decent hours, and the crew has to deal with all that too, plus extra, and they need to be treated better and have good night's sleep and whatnot.
Oh yeah, unions, you realize, are hugely important once you've worked in an industry that has unionization. You know, because it's like the extras that don't have a union just get completely treated like shit.
Yeah, and we're kind of used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And people still look down on us. They're like, you don't have a hard job.
Yeah, if you're like, oh, so-and-so doesn't have a real job, that used to always bother me when people are like, oh, you must have what a cushy job, when I've like been working like 16-hour days all week and I'm exhausted and sick and I'm just like, screw you. like, don't say that to anybody. Like, you don't know how much work they're doing. As far as the future of this situation with reality TV, the insider article that like did the whole expose on this whole thing that's blowing up, that article itself highlights how pervasive this kind of thing is in the reality TV world. I don't even know if they realize how like much of an example this is of like how like insidious this can be, because even they claim that the whole genre of reality TV has always walked a fine line when it comes to morality, citing that shows like Survivor and Fear Factor are content that feeds off of the suffering of its contestants, which like no content should be like, we need people to suffer to make this, you know?
Or that just reminds me of, or this is random, but it reminds me of the set of the movie Human Centipede.
Oh God! Okay. Is there like a whole story behind Human Centipede?
No, it's a positive thing actually, because you see a movie like that and you're like, oh, that must be like, so, or it's like a. Even though it was like a campy movie and kind of weird and stuff, they apparently treated their actors really well.
Nice.
Where, you know, the actors had to be on their hands and knees when they were doing all that, and they got massages. Like,
wow.
There was a lot of camaraderie. Everyone was having fun with it. And so
that's a good thing.
And I know some people might be like, oh, this is weird, I don't like that. But it's like, they still treated people like humans on that set, and it might be a weird movie, but it's like the actors were treated so good, and it's just like you can have, it's like, and that's why like aftercare is so important. I remember I can go in detail later, but Oliver Twixt had an interview with Cycle 18 contestant Alicia from America's Next Top Model. She was also on Britain's Next Top Model, and she talked about the importance of aftercare. And it's just like it's like after all that suffering, good aftercare is very important. So it's just like we need more aftercare in reality TV. So when we see people suffering, we now don't have to do it guiltily. We're like, oh, that person probably needs some assistance.
Well, yeah, because like not only is filming the show a lot, and a lot of times more than people realized when they were signing up for it, but being in the public eye when you've never been in the public eye like that before, I'm sure can be hugely traumatic. I can't even imagine. Like, you know, just as a small YouTuber, I've been known to have panic attacks about like, but what if, you know, like someone's upset at me or like I hurt somebody's feelings or whatever. I can't imagine going from nobody knows who I am to like everybody, including the Kardashians, know who I am now. And everything I do is all of a sudden under this microscope. Like, I imagine that can be very difficult to deal with on its own, especially after you've gone through this, like, according to this, incredibly traumatic thing in the first place. Currently, between the 4 seasons of the show, 17 couples have gotten engaged, but by my count, only 8 are still married, and most of those marriages are concentrated in the newest season, like I said before, and one of those married couples still hasn't even moved in together, like I've said before, so, like, you know, they definitely don't have a great success rate, obviously, for, like, who this show worked out for. I'm glad it worked out for them. Again, Lauren and Cameron had my whole heart on that first season. They were just really cute. And it's like, I'm glad that, like, some people it's worked out for them, and, like, not to diss anybody who this show has worked out for, because I'm glad that they at least got something good out of what sounds like a pretty tumultuous experience. But, yeah, for most of the people that have been on the show, it's just, like, a lot of trauma, and then sometimes literally nothing. Like, you know, when you're like, oh, we worked all week on the scene and I got seen as an extra for like 5 seconds. Imagine that, but it's like all of this. You know what I mean? Oh
gosh, plus a lot of hate from the fandom because of this, that, the other. And it's just like, it was not worth it after all that.
Yeah, that is kind of the upside to being a stand-in or an extra or something where your name isn't really tied to the job. Like no one's going to be on Twitter like hating on you, really, you know?
Oh, but I will say, speaking of hating on, the Everything Wrong With.
Oh my YouTube. God, yep.
I
Cinema Sins?
Yes, Cinema Sins. I think I told you this before, but just if you don't know, they have an episode about Thor Ragnarok, and it's so sad because this is the first time I've ever heard them talking about the background extras, and it was, or if you are in Thor Ragnarok, don't listen to this, but there was the scene when Thor first comes back to, or when he comes back to Asgard on Thor Ragnarok, and the CinemaSins counted us in the scene because they're like, oh, the background extras here are so bad at doing their job that they're not reacting to the first time Thor came in years, or they are convinced that the people in the background won their way onto the set because they're so bad at like not reacting to Thor being there. And that's kind of upsetting because I knew some of the people, or I recognized some of the people in the scene. And also, if that's not the background's fault, because well, I hate to put it on the director, but they were told like, hey, they were probably told, or they were probably allegedly told, hey, don't react to the fact that Thor is here. Yeah. Just kind of go about and having your conversation. That's not bad acting, and that was kind of it was kind of unwarranted in my opinion. I can understand if you're like, why are the background acting that way, but to say like they're terrible or they must have won their way onto the set for not reacting to this, like they were told not to react.
Yeah, because if they were supposed to react, they would have gotten that reaction, especially something like Marvel. Like the director is not just going to be like, okay, I told you to do something and you did the complete opposite thing. Let's move on now. Like that doesn't happen. Like if they weren't reacting, that's because the director was telling them not to. I've been there where it's like, these two people in this scene are going to be screaming at each other in a restaurant, but don't look at them. And I'm like, but I would be looking at them if they were screaming at each other in this really nice restaurant in the middle. Like, everybody would be looking at them. But they're like, no, don't look at them. And it's like, okay. And then you see that movie and you're like, yep, it looks weird. Because none of us are paying attention to this very weird thing happening right in front of us. And it's like, I remember exactly what you're talking about. And there was one person who we all knew because they did a lot of extra work. And they were like, I think at the time, like barely 18, if that old. They might have still been under 18. And they were one of the people in that scene that was being like ragged on super hard. And like everybody this went around in the circles of like extras that I knew here in Atlanta. Everybody was pissed because it was just like, this is punching down so much. Like, I know they probably didn't put this much thought into it when they did the everything wrong with video, but that's the point. Like, be a little bit more thoughtful when you're potentially talking about people that are gonna see this, because like, from what I could tell, a couple of the people who were talked about in that video, who were in that scene that was talked about, were really, really hurt by it. And it just made me upset.
Yeah, so it's just like, it's not, yeah. And, you know, I remember seeing another video that's like top 10 moments when background extras ruined the scenes. And it's like a person who's sweeping, but the broom isn't touching the floor because they were probably told sweep, but because of sound, the broom can't touch the floor. There was also a moment where they showed a clip from Planet of the Apes where like there's like the camera's spinning around because it was after the main character got caught in a net, so it's from his point of view and everything spinning, or he was getting vegetables thrown at him. And there was a point where, like, very briefly, if you slow it down, you see one of the ape people like throw a piece of lettuce like this, and if you're audio only, I'm limply throwing the lettuce, and it's like that ruined the moment. And it's just like, or it might be during a fight scene, and because of the camera angle you can see that the punch clearly did not connect, but it's just like, do you want them to like you're not supposed to actually hit people when you're doing stunt work. That's sort of an angle flaw. The stunt actors might not have known that that's what was being seen at the time, so they're just kind of like doing what they're supposed to, but unfortunately the angle kind of showed that they actually didn't hit
it's like fine, I think, to point out like, oh, that kind of looked funny. Like, I've pointed out countless things where I'm like, oh, that extra, like, I've been like covering things on the channel and being like, that extra looked right into the camera, but I'm always like quick to be like, poor like, I see you extras, I've been there, it's not your fault. Like, it's just a funny thing that happens. You can see my underwear a little bit in Love, Simon, because I was sitting on basically the ground at one point towards the end for a scene that was used in the end of the movie. And did anybody tell me that my jeans were riding down just enough so that you could see like a little bit of my pink underwear? No, they did not. Did they use that shot in the movie? Yes, they did. It's there forever now.
And now a bunch of people are going to watch.
I've already told this story. It's fine. It is what it is. If you ever see when you're like, that kind of looks like a girl. That girl, is that? I feel like I can see the pink band of that person's underwear. Yes, you can. I'm aware. I was heartbroken when I found this out.
Yeah.
There was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah. And I remember one time I was on Black Lightning during season 1. I was or I think it was I shouldn't. Oh no, my NDA.
We'll have Spencer cut it out if you want to start that over. I don't know that it matters, but like.
I mean, I have the clip on my Facebook.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
So I was on that, and the bad guys had infiltrated the school, and there was a point where one of the heroes walks into a room, and you can see me running by, and I think. In my mind, I'm like looking into the room to be like, oh no, where's the danger? Gotta keep running. And I'm making like the weirdest face. Like or in the video, I'm like, eh. But if for the audio individuals, I like have my mouth open. I'm like turned to the side. I look awkward. And I'm just like, of course, that's the take they use. But it's just like, remember, the director is the one that chooses this stuff. They're like either the background is like doing what they're supposed to do, or like whatever they're doing is not taking away from the scene. But it's just like, just don't rag on like.
That reminds me of how poor Jennifer Goodwin in Once Upon a Time was like, apparently they would like cut around her whenever she was like running, or they would use her stunt double and stuff because they thought she looked weird when she was running. She's talked about this in interviews where she's like, yeah, I guess I do look really weird when I'm running. And it's just like, oh no, that's just how she runs, guys.
Oh gosh, there was one movie that I was on where I worked on it for 6 days, and you can see me for like 2 seconds throughout the entire scene, and it's like a good 5-10 minute scene. Mm-hmm. And there was a point where it's like the one time that I'm walking by the actors and I'm like, oh cool, I may be able to be seen, and they cut around me the entire time, and I was in like a cool costume, and I'm just like, oh, why must you cut around me?
No. So in conclusion, that is the story of Love is Blind, and that is why it got its own episode, because we've been talking for an hour and a half just covering the Love is Blind and things that relate to that in our minds drama.
Yeah.
And to that I would say I hope all of the people who were on Love is Blinder, I hope you guys are doing better now. I hope being able to finally talk about this is helping a little bit. I can't imagine going through all of that and just being like, I literally can't. Well, I can kind of imagine that. I've been in similar situations where it's like, this traumatic thing happened. I can't tell anybody about it because of legal stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I hope that you're doing better now and are able to find a little bit of peace in at least everybody knowing that the production was a shit show. And I hope you're doing better. But that's kind of the end of our story right now.
If any of the contestants would like to DM Avery,
oh gosh, I'm sure you're like, please don't make me tell the story to anybody else. But you're welcome to vent to me if you need somebody to vent to. But yeah, before we leave 2019, we should find something. We should see if there's anything worth seeing before we leave.
Interesting moments of 2019. Oh, I remember last episode when you were looking up things in 2004, and the first thing that came up was George Bush fainted. That was temporarily after choking on something temporarily.
A pretzel.
A pretzel.
Yep. That was Brexit happened.
Oh yeah.
Oh no.
Oh, Brexit. Oh, and didn't Boris step down at one point, and then the person who replaced him lasted 72
Oh, that was
days.
Much more recent. I think that was like last year.
Oh, well, if we do anything in 2022, we can bring that up.
I see.
2019, oh gosh.
Oh god, I'm trying to find something that's not terribly depressing.
Was there a famous celebrity's baby born on 2019?
See, guys, I want to hear like quirky things that happened.
that should be its own page, like quirky things during this year or a certain year. That'd be an interesting page.
Let's see. Hang on, Spencer. I'm just looking real quick to find something that isn't just like politics. Everything was on fire.
Oh gosh, my world's on fire. How about yours?
That's the way I like it, and I never get bored. Now it's gonna be in my head all day.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
Oh, the college admissions cheating scandal.
Oh my gosh. That was in 2019?
Yep.
That felt like so long ago.
Yep.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. Rich people will pay for their kids to get into school. Oh my. And that's why Aunt Becky was never on Fuller House after a while.
Nope. We were like, Aunt Becky, no, that's clearly an Uncle Jesse move to try to get your kid into college by any means necessary.
Yeah, but that's supposed to be a quirky thing where we're like, oh, Uncle Jesse, but it's like, oh no, this is a serious thing.
This is an actual crime.
Literally a crime.
Oh, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had a baby. That's wonderful.
Aww. I love how people are criticizing Meghan for like not participating in any royal events, and it's just like,
why would she want to?
What? She doesn't have to. Just leave them alone. Harry doesn't want to be quote unquote king, so it's just like, just let them be.
Oh, the first all-woman spacewalk happened in October. Let's go see that before we leave.
Yay, okay.
That sounds lovely. All right.
Is it time to...
TARDIS, take us home, or take us
take
to
me away, a secret place. Whoa.
Thank you for spending this time with us. Be sure to check us out wherever your podcasts are distributed to you. That makes it sound like you have a podcast dealer, but ask your podcast dealer for new episodes weekly. Thank you for listening or watching. If you want to go subscribe to us on YouTube and see the video version of this and a bunch of other content relating to nostalgic, obscure, otherwise strange content, definitely do that. What are the other? Rate us.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Do all the fun podcasty things.
Leave a nice review for us.
Please, we're sensitive. Please don't be mean to us.
Please. And if you're a reality TV show contestant from Love Is Blind,
we're sorry.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I just want to be like, if you're a reality TV show contestant, message us and we could talk about the controversies on your show. But I'm just like, maybe that's not the best idea. If you're a reality TV show contestant, we wish you well.
We just offer our condolences. We're very sorry. But yeah, with that, bye guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.